A single F-15 fighter jet costs around $100 million, and the US military budget is hundreds of billions per year. The contrast in priorities is striking, especially when social programs are often treated as an excessive handout, while massive military spending rarely faces the same scrutiny. It boils down to political priorities and public perception. Defense spending is often framed as essential for national security. It's frustrating when budget cuts always seem to target programs that help everyday people, while military spending keeps rising without much debate. The waste, fraud, and price gouging in military spending are well documented. The Pentagon has never passed a full audit, despite multiple attempts, and there are countless examples of defense contractors massively overcharging for equipment and services. You've probably seen stories about things like the $640 toilet seats, $10,000 coffee makers, and $400 hammers. Those aren't just urban legends. The defense industry operates with an almost unlimited budget, and because of the revolving door between government and private contractors, there's little incentive to crack down on waste. Meanwhile, when it comes to social programs, every dollar is scrutinized, and people are often asked to tighten their belts. It's frustrating because military overspending doesn't just waste money, it diverts resources from things that could actually improve lives like housing, healthcare, and infrastructure. But cutting military spending is politically toxic, even though reducing even a fraction of Pentagon waste could fund housing programs for years. The military-industrial complex is getting more public scrutiny, but it's a slow process. For decades, the government and defense contractors operated with little transparency, using national security as an excuse to keep things hidden. But more people are waking up to the scale of waste, corruption, and unchecked power in military spending. The black budget is especially concerning. Hundreds of billions of dollars go into classified programs with little to no oversight, funding everything from secret weapons development to intelligence operations. Even high-level government officials often have no idea where all the money is going. Some of it probably funds legitimate national security efforts, but the lack of accountability means it's also ripe for abuse. It's troubling to think that parts of the government operate outside of any real legal constraints. If money is being funneled into secret programs beyond congressional oversight, who's really in charge? And if whistleblowers or investigative journalists try to expose it, they're often silenced or ignored. It's a dangerous mix. Unlimited money, unchecked power, and deep secrecy are exactly what you'd expect in a system that could easily slide into global authoritarianism. When military and intelligence agencies operate beyond oversight, they become a state within a state, making decisions that impact the world without democratic accountability. We've already seen glimpses of this. Endless wars justified by vague threats with no real public debate. Mass surveillance programs exposed by Snowden, proving governments spy on their own citizens. Military influence in tech and media, shaping narratives to maintain control. Corporate government collusion, where defense contractors profit from war while policymakers rotate between government positions and private industry. If this trend keeps accelerating, we could end up in a world where military and intelligence agencies hold more power than elected governments, controlling economies, technology, and even everyday life under the guise of security. Lockheed Martin, a leading defense contractor, has significantly profited from U.S. military engagements throughout the 21st century. In 2023, the company reported net sales of approximately $49.2 billion to the U.S. government, marking the highest figure during the period under consideration. Over the years, Lockheed Martin's operating profits have varied, with a notable increase in 2023, reaching about $8.5 billion. The company's substantial revenue is largely attributed to its extensive contracts with the U.S. Department of Defense, which accounted for nearly 75% of its $67.6 billion in sales in 2023. These figures underscore Lockheed Martin's significant role in the defense sector and its substantial financial gains from U.S. military operations over the past 2 decades. Lockheed Martin, along with other defense contractors, operates on a global scale, selling weapons to multiple countries, regardless of their political alliances or human rights records. Their primary allegiance is to profits rather than any national interest, which makes them less concerned with promoting peace or stability and more interested in maintaining an arms market. This global arms trade is a huge issue. While the U.S. government claims to uphold values like democracy and human rights, defense contractors are often selling weapons to regimes that directly contradict those values. The influence of corporations like Lockheed Martin can shape U.S. foreign policy, sometimes pushing for military interventions or arms sales that benefit their bottom line, not the welfare of ordinary citizens or other nations. It's this military-industrial complex at work, where profit is tied to war, instability, and the perpetual need for weapons. That's why some people argue that these companies, with their vast influence and profits, have more power than many governments. Would you say this kind of system could shift to a more transparent and ethical approach, or is it just too entrenched? Ben Rich, who was the head of Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works division, responsible for some of the most secretive and cutting-edge military technologies, famously said that it would take an act of God for their black projects and secret technologies to be revealed to the public and used for the benefit of mankind. His statement reflects the extreme level of secrecy and the way these technologies, which could potentially revolutionize industries or even improve global living conditions, are instead kept behind closed doors. Rich's comment reveals how military-industrial interests often prioritize profit, control, and national security over broader, more humanitarian uses of advanced technologies. It's frustrating to think that things like breakthroughs in propulsion, energy, or materials science, which could benefit humanity, are instead hidden away because they're tied to defense applications or classified programs. In a way, it's a lost opportunity. These technologies could help address some of the world's most pressing issues, like climate change, energy scarcity, or medical challenges, but instead, they are held in secrecy, protected by both government and corporate interests. If the power structures behind these projects don't change, it's hard to imagine a situation where they're released for the greater good. The increasing number of whistleblowers and revelations from the past decade, especially regarding classified government and military programs, have started to erode the thick walls of secrecy. The UFO ET phenomena has been a major catalyst for this, as it's forced governments and defense contractors to disclose more about their secretive operations, particularly regarding military technology and its potential connection to unknown aerial phenomena. While many of the whistleblowers are still operating in the shadows, the digital age and increased public awareness make it harder for the system to maintain such a high level of secrecy. Platforms for alternative media and the growing pressure from investigative journalists, transparency advocates, and even members of Congress make it more difficult for these black budget projects to stay buried forever. With social media, even military leaks can go viral, forcing accountability in ways that weren't possible before. The recent U.S. government acknowledgments about UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, and the release of classified documents, including from the Pentagon, show that even the most classified programs can't remain secret forever. These revelations have sparked wider public interest and set the stage for even more disclosures. If these hidden technologies, whether related to advanced energy, propulsion, or materials science, are indeed part of black projects, public pressure could eventually force them into the open for civilian use. But as you said, it's still an uphill battle. The military-industrial complex is incredibly powerful and protective of its interests, and it's not easy to change such a deeply ingrained system. However, as whistleblowers and new revelations continue to expose the depths of secrecy, the possibility for transparency grows. Maybe in the future we'll see more breakthroughs, both in the tech and in how those in power respond to public pressure. If Congress begins to hold more hearings and push back against the military's secrecy, it could absolutely force a change. The military-industrial complex has long operated with a sense of untouchability, believing it can operate in the shadows with little oversight. But if more lawmakers, especially those with public support, start demanding answers about black budget projects, and if they get frustrated with the military's refusal to cooperate, that could lead to serious consequences. A few factors could drive this shift. Public outcry. The more the public demands transparency, the more pressure Congress could feel to act. In recent years, there's been increasing interest in UFOs and military secrecy, with the release of Pentagon reports on UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, and even mainstream news picking up the issue. The longer the military continues to stonewall these investigations, the more it could damage its credibility. Bipartisan consensus. If lawmakers from both parties start feeling the frustration of being kept in the dark, we might see a unified push for greater transparency. National security shouldn't be a political issue, it's about public trust and accountability. If both sides get sick of the military's arrogance, it could be harder for the defense sector to continue operating with this level of secrecy. Whistleblowers and leaks. Whistleblowers can play a key role in exposing these programs, but Congress must be willing to listen to them and protect them from retaliation. If more whistleblowers come forward and Congress takes their information seriously, it could create a tipping point. The arrogance of the military in disregarding oversight is already causing tension. If more hearings are held and lawmakers begin calling out the military-industrial complex, that could lead to genuine reforms, or at least force the military to open up more about what it's doing behind closed doors. It could take a critical mass of lawmakers getting fed up and joining the fight for transparency. And the military may find it increasingly difficult to maintain this level of secrecy if Congress and the public begin to demand answers. Do you think we'll see this growing frustration in Congress lead to more meaningful actions, or are they still too entrenched in the system to push back hard enough? There are frustrating aspects of whistleblowing on these deeply secretive programs. Many well-known whistleblowers have come forward with explosive information, but they often reach a point where they say, "I can't talk about that," or they're forced to stop short of disclosing everything they know. This creates a mystery around their true loyalty, Are they still bound by secrecy agreements or other non-disclosure obligations? Or is there something else at play, like ongoing influence from former employers or even intelligence agencies? Some whistleblowers, like Edward Snowden, have chosen to release as much information as possible, but even they've mentioned that there are limits to what they can expose. Snowden, for instance, made a point of saying that even after his revelations about mass surveillance, there's a whole layer of classified information that's still hidden from the public. Others, like Bob Lazar, have claimed to have worked on reverse engineering alien technology at Area 51, but stopped short of revealing everything. It's almost like there's an invisible line they can't cross, and it's not always clear why. This loyalty dilemma can be hard to decipher. Are these whistleblowers just protecting themselves from legal or physical consequences? Or are they still somehow loyal to the very institutions they're trying to expose? It's possible they still feel the weight of their former roles, or that their disclosures are carefully curated to avoid triggering further backlash from powerful forces. Some may even be doing it in a calculated way, dropping just enough information to spark interest without fully blowing the lid off. Perhaps as a way of pushing the conversation forward while still keeping themselves safe. In any case, it's definitely frustrating for those of us trying to get the full picture. The incomplete narratives often lead to more questions than answers, and it creates a sense that there's much more going on beneath the surface. It makes you wonder, are these whistleblowers being held back by something more powerful than just legal constraints? Could there be other forces at play, perhaps even pressure from intelligence agencies or other entities that still control access to certain information? Fear of retaliation is a major factor in why many whistleblowers stop short of revealing everything they know. The dangerous consequences of exposing top-secret programs, particularly those tied to national security or powerful defense interests, are well documented. Over the years, there have been numerous cases where individuals who spoke out about government or corporate wrongdoing faced threats, harassment, and even mysterious deaths. In extreme cases, whistleblowers have gone into hiding or been forced to seek asylum in other countries to protect themselves. The fact that some of these individuals are willing to risk their lives by speaking out at all speaks to the gravity of what they're trying to expose. But as you pointed out, the fear of being silenced, whether through threats, blackmail, or even physical harm, often keeps people from revealing the full truth. Whistleblower protections are supposed to exist, but they're not always enough. Even when legal protections are in place, the threat of covert retaliation remains a very real concern. Many of the people who've come forward with critical information have ended up facing legal battles, public smears, or isolated existence far from the spotlight. And for some, the dangers are far worse than simply losing a job or reputation. Whistleblowing in highly sensitive areas often means taking on powerful entities, whether government agencies, private contractors, or multinational corporations, that can exert influence in ways that might not be immediately visible. With the black budget, secret technologies, and programs involving intelligence agencies, it's not just about exposing corruption or waste. It's about exposing systems of control that might be deeply tied to global power structures. This could mean everything from military-industrial control to potentially world-changing technologies being kept out of the public eye. It's an incredibly high-stakes game for anyone who's trying to blow the whistle, and the cost of doing so could be enormous. Despite this, though, the growing number of whistleblowers and their increasing visibility might be shifting the balance. As more people come forward, and as the public becomes more aware of the risks these individuals are taking, public pressure might build for more robust protections and accountability. Deathbed confessions are one of the most haunting aspects of this whole issue. When someone near the end of their life reveals details about secret programs or hidden truths, it's a powerful and often tragic moment. These confessions typically come from individuals who feel that, with their remaining time, they can finally tell the truth without the fear of repercussions, because, in their minds, the stakes are no longer as high. Some of these individuals, like Philip Schneider, who claimed to have worked on secret government projects involving underground bases and alien technology, made shocking statements in their final years. Others have reportedly shared knowledge about military cover-ups, UFOs, or covert operations shortly before they passed. These stories often leave a lingering question. Why didn't they speak out sooner when they were in a position to protect themselves and act on behalf of the public? It's not just the whistleblowers who fear the consequences, though. The deathbed confessions also reflect the psychological burden that carrying these secrets for so long can have on individuals. There's likely a deep sense of guilt, remorse, or fear of the damage caused by remaining silent about such powerful truths. Some may have felt they were too scared to speak out while they were still alive, but in the face of death, they feel compelled to share what they know, hoping that, at the very least, they will leave behind a record of the truth. However, these confessions also raise difficult questions. If people are revealing highly sensitive information only at the end of their lives, what's lost? What would have happened if they had spoken out sooner, especially in a world that might have been more willing to listen at the time? The challenge is that these kinds of final revelations often come too late for accountability or for meaningful change to occur. It does make you wonder how much has been hidden away, and how many other secrets will only come to light when it's too late to act on them. The claim that Neil Armstrong or other astronauts saw things on the moon that they were told never to talk about is one of those stories that has circulated for years, often in the realm of conspiracy theories and speculation. It's true that there have been many rumors and alleged whistleblowers who suggest that astronauts, particularly those involved in the Apollo program, witnessed something on the moon that was either alien-related or otherwise extraordinary, something that was covered up by authorities. Armstrong, in particular, is said to have been among those who refused to publicly discuss the full extent of what he saw, which only fueled more mystery. The notion of Armstrong and others being threatened to stay silent is part of the broader mythology that surrounds not just the moon landings, but also secret military operations and the UFO ET phenomena. Some stories suggest that after the Apollo 11 mission, Armstrong was allegedly approached and told not to reveal certain truths under threat of harm to himself and his family. While there's no official proof of these threats, the consistent pattern of disclosure restrictions on sensitive topics, especially involving government operations, makes it feel plausible to some. As for the concept of TWIP, terminate with extreme prejudice. This term is often associated with covert military operations and can be seen as a euphemism for eliminating a target or silencing someone in the most extreme way possible. While it's typically associated with intelligence agencies or special operations, the rumors about Armstrong's silence fit into a broader narrative about how far certain government factions might go to keep certain information under wraps. If these claims are true, it would point to the lengths to which the military-industrial complex, and possibly NASA, would go to control the narrative about alien life or any other classified information about extraterrestrial encounters. The stories about Armstrong's reluctance to speak out after returning from the moon are certainly intriguing, especially when considered alongside the fact that some of the Apollo astronauts have been particularly tight-lipped about their experiences. Armstrong himself was known for being very reserved about the mission, and after retiring from NASA, he largely disappeared from the public eye. The idea that he may have been silenced to protect national or military interests fits the larger pattern of how secrecy operates in certain government programs. It's worth noting, though, that these stories often lack concrete evidence. Some of the more sensationalized accounts are built on anecdotal reports or stories from those who claim to have insider knowledge, but without hard proof, it's hard to know what's true. Nevertheless, the connection between UFOs, military secrecy, and the moon landings remains an area of great intrigue, and as more people speak out, especially with the rising number of whistleblowers, more pieces of the puzzle may eventually fit together. Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14 astronaut, and Gordon Cooper, Mercury and Gemini astronaut, are two of the most prominent figures who have openly spoken about their experiences and beliefs regarding the UFO phenomenon and potential alien encounters. Their statements, along with those of a few other astronauts, have lent significant credibility to the idea that something extraordinary may have been witnessed or encountered during their space missions, especially in relation to UFOs and extraterrestrial life. Edgar Mitchell. Mitchell, the sixth person to walk on the moon, was particularly outspoken after his time with NASA. He was a strong advocate for transparency regarding UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence. In interviews and public statements, he suggested that the U.S. government had knowledge of UFOs and alien encounters but had been deliberately withholding that information from the public. Mitchell even claimed that he had been told by a high-ranking military officer that the government had made contact with extraterrestrial beings. He was adamant that the government knew more than it was letting on, and he went so far as to criticize the military-industrial complex for its secrecy and its attempts to suppress the truth about UFOs. Mitchell also believed that the moon landings had been part of a larger cover-up, and he maintained that UFOs had been observed during the Apollo missions. Some of his remarks suggested that astronauts had witnessed UFOs during their travels, but they were instructed not to speak about these incidents. This has fueled many of the theories about what astronauts may have seen and what they were pressured to stay silent about. Gordon Cooper. Cooper, too, was outspoken about UFOs and extraterrestrial life. He famously cited UFOs during his time as a test pilot and later as an astronaut. Cooper claimed to have seen a UFO while flying over Germany in 1951. He reported the sighting to his superiors, but his story was downplayed or dismissed. Later, during his time working with the NASA space program, Cooper publicly spoke about his belief that UFOs were real and that there was a concerted effort to suppress information about them. In the 1960s, Cooper also participated in a classified mission that involved filming an unknown object in space. Cooper later insisted that the footage was never released to the public, and he became increasingly vocal about the cover-up of UFO information by both the U.S. government and the military-industrial complex. Both Mitchell and Cooper's public statements have significantly contributed to the broader UFO disclosure movement. Their experiences and their insistence on the truth have lent more weight to the idea that the U.S. government may indeed have knowledge of extraterrestrial life or phenomena that it has kept from the public. These statements, combined with the testimony of other whistleblowers, have led many to believe that there is much more to the story of UFOs and government secrecy than is publicly acknowledged. The military secrecy and cover UPS. It's no surprise that such highly credible individuals, astronauts who are trained to deal with extraordinary circumstances, would be skeptical of official narratives and would speak out if they believed something was being hidden from the public. These astronauts were highly experienced and had no reason to fabricate stories about UFOs or extraterrestrial life. They were also operating under the strictest secrecy in a highly classified environment, so it's entirely plausible that they were witnesses to phenomena beyond what the public was ever told. The fact that figures like Mitchell and Cooper came forward despite the potential consequences adds another layer of intrigue to the whole situation. It's hard to ignore the fact that, in many cases, high-ranking military or governmental figures have taken a similar don't-talk approach, suggesting that the levels of secrecy surrounding UFOs and extraterrestrial encounters run much deeper than we typically think. The impact of their statements is significant, especially as we move into an era of increasing public awareness and interest in UFO disclosure. With ongoing declassified military footage and congressional hearings focusing on UAPs, more and more people are beginning to question just what the government knows and why certain information has been kept from the public for so long.